time for everyone's favourite part of the show where we review shit, and I think you've got a very important one to knock out the park.
I have. Liam, as listeners of the show who've been listening for a long time will know...
About a year now?
Yeah, I think it is possibly a year or more. We'd got in the habit of Liam recommending me books to intersperse with my normal reading.
Right, hang on.
That the reviews would get mixed up a little bit, because I tend to review things quite highly.
So, right.
They'd always be fantasy.
Yeah, fantasy or sci-fi, and it would always be, you would just kind of... would obviously love it, because that's your bag. It would always be like 4.5 out of 5. And I wanted to add some variety to that mix. I recommended you...
Fluke,
which you didn't really like.
No,
but again, it was different, right? It wasn't really...
It wasn't fantasy, it was a man turning into a dog.
You can't say it like that.
Well, that's what it fucking is.
Because that sounds almost werewolfish. It was more of a, like...
yeah, no, you're right. He just became a dog. There wasn't another part to it. He just became a dog for the rest of his life. Well, sure.
Yeah.
Then you recommended me Scott Sigler's...
Nocturnal?
Yeah, that's the one, which was good.
You really liked.
But that's sci-fi-ish.
But it had more of a horror element to it.
Yeah, a little bit. But yeah, that was good. Then you recommended me American Psycho.
Yeah, but to be fair, I think I did say when I recommended it, I haven't read it since I was a teenager. It's just... The thing that made me think of it is it was on the cover of like 1001 books you must read before you die. And I was like, well, Ellie likes reading, so this clearly is a book that has, you know... I wanted an easy win, and I was like, well, if it's on the cover of 1001 books to read before you die, this is going to go...
Surely it can't be a bad book. As listeners will know, it's taken me a year to read it. I stopped at 50% for months. Then I stopped at 75% until this holiday, where I sat down one day and I went, I'm going to finish this fucking book.
Yeah.
And I spent an entire day...
Yeah.
Maybe not an entire day, maybe like half a day, maybe not even that, reading the rest of the book. And I can happily report that, yes, the last 20%, 15% is very violent. Not particularly violent. If that's the selling point of the book that anyone tries to give you, ignore them. There's much more violent stuff that you can read that's more interesting. This is a bad book. Okay. I can't remember what the quote I sent Liam was, but I read
there was a quote, yeah.
Yeah, there's like an author summary at the end where he talks about... he just talked about the book, and he was like, I was sort of writing about myself, really, with how I felt disillusioned with what I was meant to be.
Do you want me to read it?
Save it for 1 second, because he finishes off his little about this book with a quote that sums up the entirety of the book for me, which I sent to Liam, and it goes like this.
Oh, yeah, now I'm reading it, sorry.
Yeah, Jesus Christ. Well, that was smooth.
But when the book came out a few months later, the controversy stopped. The complaints, the protests, the screaming about what a monster Bret Easton Ellis supposedly was, it all stopped. People finally read the book, and they found out that it wasn't 400 pages of torture and mutilation and advocating the death of women. It's just some boring novel. Yeah,
he's right. It is just some boring novel. It's a nothing book. People that are saying it's important are wrong.
I don't know. Like
he himself is just like, this is just a book. Because I've heard that being a thing where people are like, oh, what does it all mean or whatever? What's this discussion about? Is it about how bad Wall Street is and all this stuff? And it isn't. He says in the author summary thing, it's just about a man trying to live up to what a man is meant to be.
Yeah.
And having this alternate life where he isn't that man and trying to get that to mesh.
Yeah.
Like, that's all it is. And as soon as you read that, you're like, yeah, that makes sense.
So I wonder why it's put on lists like 1001 books to read before you die then.
I think because of that big controversy... that got a load of people to read it at the time, and then there's a bunch of because apparently there's a bunch of really early reviews before people had read it where they were saying something got leaked, one of the later passages where it is all violent got leaked, and people were just like, oh, what a load of trash this book is. And then it came out, and then people were like, oh no, it isn't, see, you were all wrong. So I think it's just a controversy thing where there was this big controversy, then a bunch of people defended it because it wasn't that, and that's just built up this ideal of the book. 'Cause then people who are anti the people who are controversy, they're just going to read it because it isn't controversial, if you know what I mean. So I think
I read it as a teenager because I was like, oh well, the film's come out, and at that time I like to read the book before I watch the film. And I remember reading the book ruined the film for me because I was like, oh yeah, it's just what I've read. I want to watch the film to see how it compares. Yeah.
Because I will admit, I'm being really negative because I do genuinely think it's an awful book and I don't think anyone should read it unless they really want to. But some of the stuff towards the end is more interesting. There is an entire chapter that's written about in third person, which breaks from the entire book, and that is an interesting choice, and the reason it does that is interesting. And there's just a bunch of stuff that, like, towards the end is kind of interesting in the fact that it's dealing with this, like, this guy becoming slowly more and more insane.
Yeah.
And I think it does. There was a thing I'd heard about years ago where it was like, there's this whole idea that maybe it's all happening in his head, which, when you're reading the book, you can see, and you're like, there are whole scenes that almost don't make sense because, like, no one is reacting to certain stuff.
Yeah.
And the way he's describing things, you're like, it sounds like he's this crazy guy sitting there being crazy and everyone is ignoring it.
Yeah.
So there is a part of you that's like, oh, it kind of makes sense if he's just delusional.
Okay.
But honestly, I give it like a 2 out of 5.
It's higher than I thought you'd go, to be honest.
It literally just gets a tiny bit of redemption for the interesting stuff he did at the end, and that's not even that interesting. So 2 out of 5, don't read this book.
So here's what I'm going to recommend.
No, you're not allowed to recommend me books.
No, here's my recommendation. I'm not going to recommend books for a little bit until maybe like the new year. So I'm going to let you just go off and read whatever you want to read. You can go crazy, enjoy it, and then when the new year comes around, I've learnt something very important. Because
is it not to recommend me shit?
Well, I'm currently rereading a book that as a teenager I thought was good. Like, when I think back and remember it, I'm like, there's one passage in particular I remember that creeped me out. And now I'm reading the rest of the book, and it's taken me already 2 months so far, and I'm only about 70 pages into it.
Are you realising that young Liam didn't know what the fuck he was talking about?
Yeah.
We learnt that when we watched Feast.
Yeah, this is what I mean. Yeah, so I want to recommend again, but I'm not going to recommend stuff that you think young Liam thought was good. I'm going to start trying to actually, like, find stuff that now Liam thinks is good.
That's fine. I'm up for that.
Yeah. But I want to give you...
I do trust your judgment. It's
just I want to give you a little sort of reprieve, so because I know you love reading, and there is a bunch of stuff that came out for a year.
There was a bunch of stuff that came out while I was reading American Psycho. Literally, the day after I finished American Psycho, Liam, I immediately read the 3rd book of the Bobiverse, which is something I've reviewed on here before.
Yeah.
Which I've been waiting to read for most of that year.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Anyone that's listened to my other reviews of the Bobiverse knows how I feel about it, and the 3rd book is just as good as the other 2 books. Go read that. It's a 4 out of 5. But yeah.
Well, does that not get its own review?
It's a sequel to a trilogy, so there's not a whole lot I can talk about in terms of the book itself.
Okay.
So maybe not. Like, again, I reviewed it on here before, and it stays the same for the 3rd book.
Is this the... We Are Legion? Is that,
We Are Legion, yeah. We Are Legion for We Are Many, and then like
I think I've recently uploaded them to YouTube. We Are Legion, We Are Bob, and For We Are Many.
That's it. Yeah.
Went up last week on YouTube.
Cool. Yeah. So that was amazing. And then I've got another book that's, I don't know if I've reviewed the others on here, but I'm gonna start reading that.
Which is?
Whew. I can't remember the name of it. I literally saw it come out in that year and was like, I can't even look at this because I want to read it so badly. Yeah.
Well, this is why I think I'll give you to the new year so you can just catch up on all these things that you've missed out on. And then, because I'm trying to get back into reading as well. And the book that I'm currently reading was something that I was going to suggest we do together. But because I've struggled so much with it, I'm not going to recommend that.
Is it what? It's not Book of Leaves or whatever.
Yeah, House of Leaves.
Oh, really? Because I was interested in reading that. Not as good as you remember.
I'm really struggling. The thing is, right, I would genuinely love you to read it just to see if I'm right for struggling with it.
Yeah.
But I equally don't want you to be like, it's another book that Liam's recommended that you genuinely might think it's amazing. It's one of those things that I think with you, 9 times out of 10 I can be like, I think Ellie will like this. And then there'll be the 1 time out of 10 where I'm like, it's a coin flip. She'll either love it or hate it, but there won't be a middle ground. And this is
to be fair, that's how I am with like most stuff that I watch or read. It's like I either love it or there's a very small % chance that it will just, for some reason, will not click with me and I will just hate it.
Because we were going to do House of Leaves for a culture swap, and I was going to tell you when I got about halfway through, and you were going to sort of catch up in time. And I'm just thinking, it's taken me 2 months to do about 70 pages.
Yeah.
So I don't know. As much as I really would love you to read it, I'm not going to recommend it.
That's fair.
So maybe I'll just review it normal once I finished it.
Yeah. I think it's only fair that because you've given me American Psycho, I should be allowed to recommend a book to you that you should try and read.
It's going to be this massive long one that you always recommend, The Stand or something.
Stephen King's The Stand, yes.
Yeah. Nah.
I think you should read it. I read American Psycho.
So the next book I'm going to read after House of Leaves, whenever I finish it, which will be months from now probably, is the third High School Musical book.
Oh yeah, I've still got Did I bring the other ones to you?
No, not yet. I've only got the first 4 still.
I'll have to find them at some point and bring them to you.
There's no huge
rush.
I
can see them. Yeah, got them.
Let's wait until we've moved.
Yeah.
I've also got Stephen King's Pet Sematary that I bought after I read Carrie a while back, which I do want to read, but it's a big book. Yeah. I mean, I read those Bizarro ones just because I was away and I couldn't take House of Leaves with me because it's a chunky old book. Yeah. And I think part of why I was more receptive to him was because it was just a nice little break from... It's so pretentious. We'll get there.
Okay.